What if I told you the happiest INFJs I've ever studied are the ones everyone else calls boring? And what if the quiet life you're avoiding is actually the only life built for your sanity, your energy, and your long-term success? Because according to the latest personality data, INFJs burn out 3 faster than other types when they live a lifestyle that isn't aligned with their sensitivity, their intuition, and their hidden need for solitude. And the craziest part, most INFJs have no idea they're sabotaging themselves until it's too late. Most INFJs spend years trying to fit into lives that simply don't fit. Loud friendships, chaotic schedules, overstimulation, environments that demand constant emotional labor. And quietly, in the background, their energy drains like a battery stuck at 2% trying desperately not to shut off. But here's the twist. When INFJs intentionally choose a so-called boring life, everything changes. Suddenly their intuition sharpens, their emotional bandwidth expands, their creativity comes back online, their boundaries become non-negotiable, and instead of drowning in everyone else's expectations, they finally learn to breathe in their own world again. People think INFJs want some deep, mysterious, cinematic existence. But the truth, they crave peace more than excitement. They crave predictability more than chaos. They crave depth more than noise. And the moment they allow themselves to choose simplicity, life stops being a performance and starts being a sanctuary. Seen to the psychological reason behind the boring life. INFJs have what psychologists call high-intensity internal processing, meaning the world outside might look calm, but the world inside, it's a constant storm of intuition, pattern recognition, emotional analysis, and existential meaning. This is why INFJs often feel exhausted after what looks like a normal day for someone else. It's not that they're weak. It's that their brain works overtime quietly, constantly, relentlessly. So the boring life isn't actually boring. It's an energy management strategy, a conscious choice, a survival strategy, a way to stay emotionally alive without collapsing under the weight of constant stimulation. Living simply gives the INFJ mind space to breathe, and when an INFJ mind gets space, that is when they become unstoppable. Society glorifies the loud life, the busy life, the hyper-productive life that looks great on Instagram but destroys your inner world. So when an INFJ opts for quiet routines, minimal drama, and a small circle, people assume they're unambitious or distant. But the truth is far more intentional. INFJs don't choose a boring life because they lack ambition. They choose it because their ambition is internal, deep, long-term, purpose-driven. They're not chasing dopamine. They're building meaning. They're not performing for approval. They're aligning with intuition. They're not trying to be everything to everyone. They're becoming the person they were actually meant to be. There's a moment, and if you're an INFJ, you've felt this. When chaos stops feeling exciting and starts feeling like poison. When you stop craving attention and start craving quiet. When you realize that people who drain you aren't worth the emotional rent. When you notice your best ideas show up in silence, not in the crowd. And in that moment, you understand something life-changing. Choosing a quiet life isn't giving up. It's leveling up. The boring life becomes the INFJ cheat code, the space where they finally reconnect with their intuition, their creativity, and their emotional clarity. And once an INFJ feels that level of inner stability, nothing else comes close. It's not about hiding. It's not about isolation. It's about intentional living. It's routines that protect mental energy. It's friendships that feel safe, not performative. It's hobbies that nourish the soul, not inflate the ego. It's conversations that matter, not small talk that drains. It's slow mornings. It's early nights. It's choosing depth over speed. It's choosing quality over stimulation. It's choosing emotional peace over social pressure. And yes, to the outside world, it might look dull, but to the INFJ, it feels like coming home. Recent research on HSP's highly sensitive people, which includes a large percentage of INFJs, shows that low chaos lifestyles reduce chronic stress by up to 45%. Another study found that people with intuitive dominant cognitive stacks reach peak creativity only when stimulation is low, meaning the quieter your life becomes, the louder your intuition gets. And when an INFJ's intuition is fully activated, that's when they make their biggest life decisions, their biggest creative breakthroughs, their biggest emotional shifts. This isn't guesswork. It's neuroscience. Most INFJs don't realize they re-burning out until the symptoms start stacking up like invisible bricks. It begins with subtle signs: feeling drained after small social interactions, needing more time alone, losing interest in things that used to bring joy. Then it shifts into emotional fog, mental noise, and the classic INFJ guilt spiral, where you know you need rest, but you keep showing up for others anyway. And here's the part that hits hardest. INFJs mask their burnout so well that even they can tell when they're rerunning on fumes. That's why the boring life becomes essential. It's not just about preference, it's about protection. It's about interrupting the burnout cycle before it wipes out your emotional reserves. Because once an INFJ hits rock bottom burnout, the recovery takes months, sometimes years. Choosing a simple life is how INFJs avoid that collapse. It's how they reclaim stability before the world squeezes it out of them. Here's something fascinating. Data suggests that people with rare personality types, especially intuitive, introverted feelers, actually produce their best work in low-stimulation environments, meaning the quieter your lifestyle is, the more consistent your creativity and performance become. This creates a paradox. INFJs might look unproductive from the outside, but in reality, they're generating high-quality output behind the scenes, thinking, planning, imagining, problem-solving, creating future pathways in silence. It's like the mind of an INFJ becomes a high-resolution camera lens. The less noise, the clearer the picture. So the boring life isn't laziness. It's a productivity strategy disguised as calm. It's how INFJs maintain emotional longevity while still being deeply impactful. Let's get real for a second. Every conversation, every emotional exchange, every loud environment, every unexpected change, it all hits INFJs harder than other types. That's the cost of having high empathy and deep perception. Everything is felt at 100%. Every tone, every mood shift, every tiny detail gets processed. This is why INFJs can feel drained, even by people they love. Because emotional intensity doesn't need drama to exist. It simply needs presence. But when INFJs embrace a quieter life, they reclaim emotional control. Instead of reacting to constant external stimulation, they curate what enters their space. They manage what energy comes in and what energy goes out. That's why simple living isn't an aesthetic for INFJs. It's boundaries. It's emotional hygiene. It's self-respect. There's a particular moment every INFJ knows well when someone says, "Why don't you talk more? You're too quiet. You're not very social, are you?" But here's what people don't get. INFJs aren't quiet because they lack personality. They're quiet because they prioritize meaning over noise. They don't speak unless they have something real to say. They don't engage unless the connection feels authentic. They don't force small talk because it feels like chewing emotional cardboard. So yes, to others, they might look boring. But for INFJs, not wasting energy on shallow interactions is a conscious act of preservation. There's a reason INFJs are known as the counselor, mystic, or visionary type. That intuition isn't just strong, it's razor sharp. But that superpower only activates under specific conditions. Quiet, stability, and emotional safety. This is why chaotic lifestyles weaken INFJs. Their intuition gets scrambled, their clarity disappears, their emotional compass breaks. But in a peaceful environment, everything inside them aligns again: the intuition, the pattern recognition, the emotional intelligence. Suddenly they can see the whole map, not just the road in front of them. The boring life becomes the incubator for their deepest insights. One underrated benefit of living quietly is that it sharpens your ability to spot people who actually deserve space in your life. When you're always busy or overwhelmed, you don't have the clarity to notice red flags or emotional mismatches. But when your life is calm, the truth becomes obvious. Who drains you? Who energizes you? Who respects your space? who only comes around when they need something. With a calmer lifestyle, INFJs don't just protect their energy, they upgrade their entire social circle. They build smaller, stronger relationships instead of wide, fragile ones. To the outside world, this looks boring. To an INFJ, it feels like emotional freedom. A lot of INFJs discover something surprising. Routines that look repetitive to others feel grounding to them. Consistent wake-up times, predictable mornings, familiar spaces, small rituals that create a sense of safety. These routines aren't limitations. They're anchors. They reduce anxiety. They increase mental clarity. They create emotional stability. A boring life becomes a beautifully structured life, one that builds emotional resilience day by day. If you've ever wondered why your best ideas show up when you re-alone it, it's not a coincidence. The INFJ mind needs stillness to create. Silence becomes the catalyst for imagination. That's why INFJs who embrace simplicity suddenly write more, create more, think deeper, understand themselves better, generate long-term visions with ease. The quieter the environment, the louder the creativity becomes. It's almost unfair how powerful this is. There's a very specific shift that happens when INFJs begin choosing a quieter life. They stop apologizing for their boundaries. They stop justifying their need for space. They stop explaining why they don't want constant plans or unpredictable chaos. For the first time, no becomes a full sentence, not an apology followed by nervous over-explaining. This is where the INFJ transformation begins. Instead of bending their life around others, they start shaping their life around themselves. It feels unfamiliar at first, almost rebellious, but slowly it becomes liberating. And once this boundary setting becomes natural, INFJs notice something shocking. Their energy feels lighter, their mind feels clearer, their emotions feel stable again. Saying no is what creates the space for the boring life to actually flourish. Scene 16, the minimalist heart of the INFJ. INFJs don't always realize this, but their personality naturally leans toward minimalism. Emotionally, socially, even physically. The less clutter around them, the deeper they can think. The fewer connections draining them, the more authentic their relationships become. The fewer distractions, the more they can follow their intuition. It's not about living with nothing. It's about making room for meaning. A simplified lifestyle becomes a kind of emotional editing, removing everything unnecessary so the important things become obvious. And once an INFJ experiences this clarity, they rarely go back to the chaotic version of their old life. To outsiders, this looks plain. To an INFJ, it's inner spaciousness, the mental equivalent of a clean horizon. Scene 17. The quiet life strengthens identity. INFJs often grow up mirroring others, absorbing emotions, adapting to social dynamics, playing roles in different environments. This makes them incredible at understanding people, but terrible at understanding themselves. But here's what the peaceful life does. It gives the INFJ enough internal silence to finally hear their own voice. What do I actually want? What do I genuinely value? What do I enjoy when no one is watching? What dreams are mine? Not inherited, not expected, not forced. This self-discovery doesn't happen in noise. It happens in the quiet corners of life, early mornings, slow nights, long walks, deep thinking. And when INFJs finally meet themselves without distraction, their identity becomes unshakable. The boring life becomes the place they finally see who they truly are. Scene 18. Why INFJs thrive in predictability. Most people think predictability is dull, but for INFJs, predictability is peace. When life becomes consistent, INFJs become stable. When schedules are steady, their emotional world calms down. When environments feel familiar, their intuition activates fully. Predictability doesn't trap INFJs. It frees them. It gives them the structure they need to explore their inner world without feeling overwhelmed. Chaos drains them. Stability strengthens them. That's why INFJs often look back later in life and think, the moment I stopped chasing excitement was the moment I finally started growing. A lot of INFJs secretly worry they're missing out when they choose a quieter life. They see other people traveling constantly, partying every weekend, living fast, loud, unpredictable lives. And there's this quiet fear. Shouldn't I want that too? But here's the truth. INFJs don't miss out on experiences. They absorb them more deeply. They don't need quantity. They need quality. They don't need crowds. They need connection. They don't need stimulation. They need meaning. And the more they lean into their boring life, the more they realize that what looks ordinary from the outside feels extraordinary on the inside, because it has aligned with who they are. Psychology studies on sensory processing sensitivity show that people with deep emotional and intuitive processing perform best in calmer lifestyles. Their nervous systems are built differently wired to notice everything, feel everything, reflect on everything. In a chaotic lifestyle, this wiring becomes a burden. In a simple lifestyle, this wiring becomes a gift. Reduced stimulation lowers cortisol levels. Predictability reduces anxiety spikes. Quiet routines increase dopamine stability. Deep relationships strengthen oxytocin bonds, meaning the boring life isn't a preference. It's biological optimization. INFJs don't just emotionally prefer calmness. Their nervous system requires it. There comes a turning point, and every INFJ reaches it eventually, where they suddenly stop fighting who they are. They stop forcing themselves into loud rooms. They stop pushing themselves into draining friendships. They stop pretending they're okay with chaos. They stop trying to keep up with a lifestyle that was never designed for them. And in this moment of surrender, something beautiful happens. They start designing a life that actually feels like theirs. It's a quiet shift, but it changes everything. Because INFJs finally allow themselves to choose peace without feeling guilty. When INFJs settle into a boring life, the outside world sees calm routines and quiet days. But on the inside, something much bigger is happening. Ideas forming, intuition sharpening, stories unfolding, connections deepening, emotions healing, purpose revealing itself one layer at a time. The INFJ inner world is never boring. It's just private, and the quiet life protects that privacy. The boring life is simply the INFJ way of making space for everything that truly matters. If you're an INFJ watching this, here's the truth. Most people won't tell you. Your life doesn't have to look exciting to be meaningful. Your world doesn't have to be loud to be valuable. Your journey doesn't need to match anyone else's pace or aesthetics. If your peace looks boring to other people, that's their problem, not your responsibility. You're not choosing a boring life. You're choosing a life that protects your mind, your heart, your intuition, your creativity, and your emotional longevity. And that choice, that's not boring. That's wisdom. So if you've ever wondered why you crave quiet, why chaos feels like poison, why simplicity feels like home now, your life doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. It just needs to be yours.